Lovely, we're starting to get a lot of people in now, so I think on that note we shall start. So hello everybody, and for those of you just joining, welcome to the Mind Behind the Heart of the City Sheffield project. We're here today with our guest Nalin. He is the director and project manager of the whole scheme, and we will get to know more about him later on, so let's get started. So as you're all aware,
Sorry, just before you start. So this webinar is sponsored by East Riding Yorkshire Council, and it's joint with CIOB Novus. So just a bit about Novus. They're a community for rising stars to flourish, providing opportunities for young professionals to develop and grow on a personal and professional level, whilst inspiring the next generation of construction industry professionals. So you can get in touch with Kirsty or Stacey, Stacey is the chair of CIOB Novus. So I'll post their emails in the chat if you want to get in contact with them. But yeah, we're going to talk about Nalin today and his career and how the Heart of the City Sheffield project began, which will lead us nicely into next week's webinar, where we will be discussing what is actually behind the hoarding. So it should lead nicely into next Friday. So for those attending for the first time, if you've not been to a G4C webinar before, me and Demi are going to do a quick run through of what G4C is, and then we'll get started. So this is me and Demi. We are the chairs of G4C Yorkshire and Humber. There's our contact details if you want to get in touch. So what is G4C? So G4C is a young professionals multidisciplinary organisation which is formed to give young voices the platform to connect, collaborate and develop their roles in the built environment. So we're a national network, and we really do welcome any trade, any profession or any person. So as you can see, this is our national structure. So we've got regions all over the UK. And the beauty of webinars is you can be anywhere and watch the webinar. So wherever you're listening from, then get in touch with your local G4C chair if you want to get involved. Okay. So you go, Demi, sorry.
Sorry, the aims of G4C is to engage with as many young professionals and students across the built environment sectors. We are here to promote the built environment industry and its connections to the wider context, and allow us to become a driving force to promote change and challenge best practice. We want to keep you all up to date with the latest news, trends and adaptations, and we are here to help recognise young talent. So this is what our events used to look like when we could all be together. As you see, we have fabulous turnouts. We have great panelists come along, and just overall, everyone always enjoys our in-person events. But fortunately, we've still had great success for our webinars. So thank you all so much for turning up. And then the links of our external groups, like Lydia said, we do have so many variety of people from across all disciplines, and we are here to make sure that you are linked with other professional groups out there to enhance your development.
So what does G4C actually do? So we run various CPDs, training and social events. Hopefully we can do more in-person events later on this year, fingers crossed, Boris. So we collaborate with schools, colleges, universities, which we definitely want to be doing more of this year. Direct involvement with industries. We promote the next generation's ambitions to current leaders, and we engage with other regions to promote and understand and develop what G4C can achieve. We've also got a podcast that we do with G4C Northwest, if you want to check that out.
It's called the Next Generation Podcast for you guys who don't know, and we're very proud of it. So what are the benefits of G4C to you who join the committees? It can obviously expand your professional network across a variety of companies and individuals. It can help you fulfil your professional body requirements, and it gives you access to low-cost, high-quality professional training. It helps develop your industry awareness through engagement with like-minded individuals. and it also helps assist you build your professional identity, and the opportunities are here to enhance both your professional development as well as your commercial objectives.
So this is our calendar so far for the year. As you can see, it's very jam-packed. Any previous events, like Demi said earlier, if you didn't get to attend them, they're all on our YouTube channel, and they're all pre-recorded, so you can watch those. So we've got next week again with Nalin, which is going to be about the actual project itself, so hopefully you can all come to that. And then we've got loads more happening in the rest of the year, so if you follow us on Twitter and any social media, you can keep up to date with our events and what's happening.
Okay, so our G4C Awards is happening on the 1st of October this year, and we are super excited. We're really pushing for this to be an in-person event just because of how fabulous our years have been previously, and it'd be so great to see everyone in person. So there are, again, 10 categories that you can be nominated for. You can either nominate it through yourself, or you can have your company nominate on your behalf. And yeah, we always have a fantastic turnout, and it's a great event to just celebrate everything we've all been working so hard to achieve this year, and we hope to see you all there. So any additional information or questions that you might want to know, feel free to contact myself or Lydia, and like Lydia said, we're on social media across LinkedIn and all other platforms too. So now we can get started with why we're all here today. We would like to introduce you to Nalin. Sorry, I'm just getting up the other screen. So Nalin has held senior positions in the public and private sectors for over 30 years. He has joined Sheffield City Council in 2009 as a property director and now holds the position of Director of City Centre Development. Through this position, he has guided the delivery of the Heart of the City 2 project, and this project is focusing on reinforcing Sheffield's position as an inclusive regional capital at the heart of an ambitious northern economy. Nalin is a fellow of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors and a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. And now we'd like to hand over to Nalin just to say hello and introduce yourself.
Great, thanks, Demi. Thanks a lot to Lydia and Demi for inviting me this afternoon to speak to you all. It's a great pleasure, and thanks to G4C and CIOB and other sponsors. So I'm Nalin Seneviratne, Director of City Centre Development at the Council, and looking forward to talking to you about my career and hopefully how that might inspire some of you to progress in your own careers in the construction industry.
Fabulous, thank you, Nalin. So I guess the first question to kick it off then is, what was your route into the construction industry?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting, really. I suppose some people might say it started with a failure. I think my parents would. So I generated an interest in construction, in buildings from a very young age, because back in 1968 we moved into a brand new house on a brand new estate. The houses were still being built around us, and I remember as a 4-year-old at the time, actually going into the house next door to see how it was being built. So I kind of that early interest was generated from a very young age. And my dad also moved up to Liverpool from London to work for a thing called the Gyro Bank at the time, which was the post office's bank. And there was a big new centre being built in Merseyside, and he'd come home with things like hard hats and the like. So yeah, it was from a very young age. And when we moved into, over the years, we moved around a little bit, but we moved into a house that was built in 1873, and it had been converted into flats. And as a family, we converted the house back into a single dwelling house. And I got involved with things like running cornices and cutting the templates out on the stair strings and so on, and fascinating. So that was an interest. But at school, I was being pushed in another direction. I was being pushed in the direction of either dentistry or medicine or whatever. But the failure bit was I completely screwed up my A levels. And so my parents thought I was a complete failure, and what on earth's going to become of Nalin? But I realised I took time out. And thought, well, what is it that I'm really, really interested in? that look back to my childhood and what interested me, it was construction, it was building. So I thought, with the 1A level I had, I thought, what on earth can I do to get into some form of higher education? And I found an HND course in construction down at Bristol Polytechnic, and got involved in that. They took me on board, and effectively that was my, that was my route in.
Amazing. So I'm not quite sure if we've lost Lydia. She seems a little bit frozen on the screen, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you the next question. So I guess, what is it that you came in? Just to clarify, what position is it that you came into in the industry?
So I started. So after, when I did my HND, the great thing was, as a lot of big, a lot of HND and BSc courses are even to this day, it was a sandwich course. You spent a year in industry. And in my year out in industry, I worked for a house builder called Broseley Homes. Broseley became part of Ideal Homes, which became part of Persimmon Homes. So that's the heritage of Broseley. But I have to be really grateful to the managing director of Broseley Homes down in Exeter. This is down in Devon, a guy called John Pendlebury, because John Pendlebury decided to throw me in at the deep end. And he put me in as an assistant site manager just a year after just doing a year of HND. He put me in as an assistant site manager, and I really had to learn really quickly. And as well as the site manager role, he made sure I covered 3 roles. One was a site manager, one was as site engineering, and one was quantity surveying. And with each of those, I was literally thrown in at the deep end, and I had to sink or swim, and I managed to swim. The engineering element was a bit where I did sink, because I thought I knew it all after a year's worth of surveying at Bristol Polytechnic, and the senior engineer that I was working for said, right, okay, if you know it all, here you go, here's a brand new field, you go and set out the road. He came back at the end of the day. I was still trying to work out how to put the theodolite together. So I had a real lesson in not being too cocky about things. And at the end of that period, I was, site managers would be phoning me up saying, can you come and set out this and set out that? And I was, running around in my car, all different sites around Devon, and doing that. So my first entry, I suppose, was, and that initial aspect into the industry was my year out in industry working for a house builder.
Wow. Are you back, Lydia? Oh, no, you're still muted.
Sorry, my computer froze on me, so I had to transfer to my iPad instead. But sorry, everyone, for that. But I got the back end of that, which was very interesting. So what was your experience working as a site engineer, sorry?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, because the site engineering, when I was working with Broseley Homes, the senior engineer I was worked for taught me to always question the designs that were coming forward from the engineering consultancies. So especially on drainage runs, particularly, he taught me to kind of think through how we could do things in a much more efficient way, rather than just take what was being given and just get on with it. And because it was a house builder, because it was about, we were in control of what we were doing, it was about maximizing the profit on sales, etc. That was a very valuable lesson to me. And the other experience of working as a site engineer, especially further on in different companies I worked for, it actually taught me a lot about performance management. And I say that because when I was being asked to set out things like drainage runs and roads, the groundworks teams were always chasing me left, right and centre to make sure that I'd got these things set out for them. Otherwise, they couldn't actually get on and do the work they had to do. And that was a really early lesson for me around performance management, the hard way, with a 360-degree swing shovel behind you, kind of chasing you down the hillside and getting drainage lines set out. So for me, that really taught me a lot. It also gave me a good grounding in actually, you know, how things do get put together, whether it was setting out buildings, setting out foundations, whether it was drainage runs, whether it was roads. It taught me a lot about the basics and about having to work, you know, closely with those groundworks and civil engineering contractors and subcontractors who were really up against it to perform.
Thank you, Nalin. So I guess this is an interesting one, and I'm sure you've got many answers to this question, but what surprised you the most about the construction industry and being a part of it? If it's something that you kind of, like you say, came into from failed A-levels and it was just from a passion and you had so many things to learn and experience, what has stood out to you and surprised you about this industry?
So I think, I mean, in another way, I suppose if I turn that around a little bit, it's almost what do I love about the industry in many ways. And in terms of the education, it wasn't a complete failure, by the way. So what I did was, as I moved through, I decided that, and I think this is the thing, I decided what the construction industry showed me, that there was a lot to learn, and there was a lot to learn which I just found fascinating. And in that desire to learn more and learn more, I did put myself through a degree in construction, which I did part-time. So that was a tricky one with a young family at the time, and I was living in Plymouth, and I'd have to drive to Southampton once every 3 weeks as sort of day release to do this degree course over 4 years. And I did that because I just wanted to keep learning. I could have just stopped with my HND and just carried on with the roles I was doing, but I felt that the industry had so much to teach me that not only did I want to learn on the job, but I also wanted to learn from an academic perspective and understand the theory behind things and understand the scientific aspects behind things as well. So it was very much about pushing myself through to learn as much as I could. And I think, you know, in terms of what was surprising, maybe not surprising, but I think again the value of the industry is that you come across so many different people at so many different levels, and that's something I think, you know, for people starting out in the construction industry as a career, make the most of that, because that's the sort of thing that will really help you move forward in your career. Make the most of getting to know, you know, whether it's the site labourer sweeping up or groundworks contractors, talk to them, get to know them, get to understand what their issues are. At the same time, you know, you're dealing with the your professional team, your consultants, your architects, engineers, surveyors, etc., and importantly the client, and being able to communicate with everybody. And I suppose that's an amazing thing about this industry. You can learn to communicate with all and sundry, and that is really, really important, and communication is really key. And I think the other thing that's exciting about the industry is it's all about solving problems. It's all about working out how on earth do you build this thing, you know. And as I moved through from site engineering, and actually I moved into quantity surveying from that, and my quantity surveying career actually took me into project management, took me back into site management as a site manager, and then into project management. The key, you know, the key thing is that with all of that, there was always something new to learn, and yeah, being able to solve problems, ending up as a site manager and being given a job, right, go and build this factory or go and build this building or whatever it was, and you sit there scratching your head and saying, right, okay, how on earth are we going to do this? If it was a confined site, or if it was in an area that you didn't know. So I did a couple of jobs away from home, where I was sent to South Wales or I was sent to Kent with subcontractors I'd never met before. I had to go and start completely from scratch and find out what the supply chain was in the area and actually start putting things together. So when you're in those situations, you learn so much about you know, that problem solving, resolving those issues, forming new relationships with people, and those relationships are really important at the end of the day to get the job done. So those are the things that, you know, not so much a surprise, but I think it's the qualities of this industry that make it really special.
Thank you. That's so nice to hear.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. I think the industry is so diverse and it's ever changing, and everything, especially working on site, there's never a day that's the same and you're never bored. So yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And there's so many interesting people. I had a thought the other day thinking I would love to just take pictures of people that I meet on site and then write about their life stories, because there's so many interesting people.
Do you know what? You should do that. And everyone on the call, photograph the people you're working with, photograph yourself with them, because I can think of so many fantastic teams, because at the end of the day, it's also about team building. It's about working with, you have to form new teams all the time. I just before this, I was doing a bit of a refresher through the City Council on sort of personal development, and one of the topics we were just talking about was that formation of teams. And some of you will be familiar with the forming, storming, norming, performing aspects of team building. And the thing is, in the construction industry, you do that time over time over time. Some people might start in a career and they work in a team, they're working for a particular company or with a local authority or whatever it might be, and that's the team, until they leave that business. But what we do with this industry, we're forming new teams all the time, and we're going through all those dynamics all the time, and therefore building relationships, communicating properly with people is a key to success. And I say, going back to what I was saying earlier about learning about the new technologies that come forward. There's so much out there in terms of tech that it's fascinating, and it's what got me out of bed in the mornings to put my boots on and put my high vis jacket on. And I think I started out in the day when we didn't even do high vis, so that's showing my age there. But it's it's just it helped me with my career. And I say, get to meet those people, photograph things as you go along. I didn't. There's a few memories I've got, and I think, crikey, if only we had some photographs of that, it'd be fantastic.
Liz, just before you ask the next question, I just want to say, from all of the key points that you've put there, it's communication and collaboration. It holds our industry together. And again, that's why I'm so passionate about being a part of G4C. Without this network at such a young age, I really would be siloed to my working environment. And there's so much more to gain by communicating with people outside of my professional kind of day-to-day basis. And just the other day I was on site with some amazing contractors, and I was thinking, G4C, we need to work harder to actually find ways of hosting these talks and events and stuff with people who don't get to come on laptops at their lunch hour, and people that are on site all day and maybe don't get to know what the latest trends are. So we're definitely becoming more aware, and I think together me and Lydia are so passionate about bringing that bridge across from the designer side to the work of people on site. Go ahead, Lyd, sorry, I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Demi. So this is probably relating to your what you were talking about with technology, but how has the industry changed from when you first started to now?
Yeah, well, I think I've seen a lot of change, and I think what I'm finding now is that since I've been not exactly outside the industry, but in terms of moving from the construction industry to the public sector, which I did 17 years ago now, I guess I took a bit of a break from understanding the changes that were going on. And what I'm amazed to see now, especially working with the Heart of the City project, where I've had a bit more of a direct involvement with the contractors on site. It's the changes I feel are just amazing in terms of the improved supply chain management. I mean, supply chain management was a thing that was new when I was working for people like Molem Construction back in the 90s, and we were starting to get our heads around that and look at how we could improve the supply chain. And I think in some respects that was driven by clients as well, especially in the retail industry, in the retail food industry, where the supply chain management that was coming from industry generally was feeding into the construction industry, which was then behind the times, for sure, absolutely behind the times. And so we were learning from those other industries as to how to better manage the whole process. So what's been great for me to see today is how that work has really improved in leaps and bounds, where you know, main contractors now have got rock solid supply chains in place. Again, going back to that relationship building, understanding how all the various parties work together better is fantastic. And I think that's where, you know, from a client perspective, and I talking to colleagues or talking to others in my position, when I hear about, you know, oh yeah, competitive, we've got to get screw things down on price, and we've got to make sure things have, you know, all the packages are competitively bid. Well, that's fine in so many ways, but actually what you've got to be careful of, even as a client, is that you can sometimes disrupt that supply chain because you're trying to, you know, you're chasing the pennies, and actually by doing that you're not looking after the pounds, and the value that can come out of that effective supply chain management, I think, is something that the client side of things needs to improve on, in terms of making sure that they're getting the most out of the industry on their projects. So that's a big change. I think the other big change is the technological change and the use of things like BIM. I mean, that's amazing. And for me, you know, although it's been around for a while now, my first real engagement with it was on the Grosvenor House project as part of Heart of the City, and working with BAM Construction, and just seeing how, you know, that building was literally built virtually. With all that, again, with that supply chain interaction, to look at where the issues were, look at where the clashes were, start to design those things out. And that's such a massive change that for me, that scheme, given that we lost nigh on a year out of the programme on that particular building, we still managed to finish it on time and to budget and to the right quality specification. And I think things like BIM must have played a massive role in being able to make that happen. I think if that wasn't the case, we would have been late, just because of the sort of previous traditional way of doing things. So those are the big changes I've seen, and I think that in health and safety as well now, and the way health and safety is dealt with on site now is a massive improvement from where it was. I think when I first started on site, I don't think I was even given a site helmet, and I remember we were unloading roof trusses off a lorry, and I actually got my head caught between two roof trusses that like were swinging off the crane, and somehow my head was between them, and these two roof trusses went bang off the side of my head. Now, thank goodness it wasn't too much of a bang, and it wasn't a problem, and you know, I'm still here today. But I think back and think, that's crazy. How crazy was that? That wasn't that it just wasn't immediately routine to dish out things like hard hats. So the health and safety side has changed massively as well. I was on a project in Cornwall where we actually had a fatality with a young labourer falling through a roof light on a big tin shed job that we were doing. That job led to nets being used on roof construction. They'd never been used until that particular fatality on that job, and that's not anything to be proud of, for crying out loud. And I was only I think I was the QS, I was the contract surveyor on that, and you know, I wasn't the site manager on the case, but nonetheless, it was still the company that I worked for where we had that issue. But yeah, netting wasn't even being used then, but came in after that incident. So, you know, I mentioned health and safety on purpose because you've got to get it right. You've got to, you know, you want to send people home at the end of the day safe and sound, and that's really important. But those as well, those are massive changes that have happened over the 30 odd years, almost 35 years now since I got involved in the industry.
Thank you. Lydia, do you want to answer some of the questions that have been coming up in the chat? Because I think they were relating quite well to what Nalin was just saying. Nalin, sorry.
Yeah. let me try and figure out how to do that. All right, so one of the questions is from Bradley. Where do you see the industry in the next 20 years?
Interesting one. I think a lot may hinge on what we do around sustainability and climate change, and how we need to think about how we build, materials that we use, whether we build at all, whether we're reusing existing buildings more than we do so at the moment. So I think that will be a challenge for the industry moving forward, which will change it over the next 20 years. I think the use of more modular techniques and offsite techniques, I think, have got to come to the fore. They've got to come to the fore even in relation to the sustainability agenda. I tried, crikey, when was it? It must have been about 1999, 2000. The whole modular thing was quite interesting on the back of things like the Latham report into the industry. And I hooked up with a company in Holland that was doing modular construction. I was trying to see if we could bring the modular units, actually import them into the UK, and use the construction, the Dutch construction company as the supplier for stuff. But the company I was working for at the time just didn't get it, and they thought, modular, what the heck's that all about? Not interested. And for me, as well as the modular for modular's sake, it was about how we actually become more efficient, how the industry could become more efficient in terms of delivery and the delivery of projects, and also how the industry could move to providing more of a product than a service. So I still argue that what the industry does is provide a service, because everything's bespoke. And bespoke work is effectively a service. It's producing it's providing a service. It's a service to the clients that want the buildings, and they're all designed individually, and we've got all the design teams, etc., involved. What we don't do particularly is sell a product. We use products in delivering the built the output, the final thing we're building, but what we're doing is providing a service, knitting all that together. I think an interesting thing for the future will be how the industry, in relation to modular construction and sustainability, ends up producing more of a product. So if, let's say, for argument's sake, Henry Boots, you end up, what you become known for is a particular office type building or residential type building, and that's, if you want that sort of thing, that's what you get. It's what there might be some variation to it, a little bit like the motor industry. The motor industry sells a product, and you've got different variants of the models, and you can go in and choose what color paint you want or what sort of upholstery you want. But effectively, you are getting a product, and the industry is very, very efficient. And I think, how that might shape up, it might not shape up completely, because again, the construction industry's got to deal with topography, geography, soil conditions. So all of those things will always be bespoke. But there's an element of prefabrication and modern methods of construction, which I think will take more of a front seat in the future, which will lead the industry to be more about offering a product than a service.
That's really interesting ideas, especially when I try and think about my role as an architectural designer, how I would fit into that and what kind of service I would be able to provide if we were kind of able to design something that was on the shelf already, and you just say you want section A, B and C, that's fine, let's stick them together. It'd be very interesting to see how that would affect designers' roles, and I guess other people who are attached to that as well. I think I agree with the fact that sustainability is such a crucial thing that we all need to be working towards improving. And especially when we listen to the sustainability talk we had last time, using the word isn't just enough. It's actually to do with everything that is in the construction industry and everything we do as professionals. So there is a question here. What are your thoughts on digital smart buildings and their ability to reduce the carbon emissions?
Yeah, I think smart buildings, smart cities, it's a kind of phrase that's used a lot. I don't think we're delivering a lot. Maybe in terms of buildings, we're getting there. Building management systems and the like, we're improving all the time. I think in terms of sustainability for buildings, making sure we're using data and that sort of looking at the layers, the infrastructure that we've got, the data that can be harvested from how we're using that infrastructure, to be able to use that data to improve the services, to improve efficiency, whether it's energy or anything else, is really important. And I think, linked to what I was saying before about the changes to the industry, changes to construction around sustainability, I can only see that becoming more and more important as we move into future years.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's yeah, I think it's a long road ahead, but we will get there. So just before we move on to the heart of the city questions and how we got to that point, just one last question, which is, what advice would you give to young professionals starting their career in the construction industry? And you know, if a young person wanted to get to a director level, what advice or what qualities do you think they should have to get to that point?
So make the most of it. First of all, it's a fascinating industry. It's got multiple facets. There's multiple different feeds into the industry, whether it's from professional architects, engineers, surveyors, construction management, the product side of things that we've been talking about today, the manufacturers. There's so much to learn about. So make the most of it. Make the most of all those different people that you'll meet along the way. Make the most to learn from them, listen to their stories, listen to what, you know, gets them out of bed in the morning. In many ways, being able to put teams together on these projects, it's understanding what makes people tick. And if you understand the different agendas or the different issues that people are trying to deal with, that goes a long way to making your projects a real success. So make the most of it. Listen, engage, communicate with people. Keep learning, you know, continuing professional development, really, really important. You know, I started at a point where, you know, my parents thought I was going to become a doctor. I was going to get 3 A's at A level or whatever, and that was going to be it. I didn't. I got one general studies A level, and I thought, what the hell am I going to do with my life? But that didn't stop me learning. It didn't stop me actually going on and getting a degree. I went on and got a degree in construction. I went on and got a degree in law. Why did I go do a degree in law? Well, all the contracts we were dealing with, and I was fed up with people who didn't really know what they were talking about, arguing that, you know, we should do X, Y, and Z. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and get a law degree. So I really do know what I'm talking about with this stuff. And that's my advice to you. Keep learning, keep stretching yourselves, keep stretching your minds, because it you know, as I sound like a stuck record now, it's such a fascinating industry, and there is so much there that you've got to open your minds to it. And if you open your minds to it, coming back to that question about moving to sort of director level, you'll get there. If that's what you want to do, ultimately be the best you want to be. That's the thing. Whether you want to be the best site engineer in the world, whether you want to be the best architect in the world, whether you want to be the best site manager in the world, whether you want to be the chief executive of a major, you know, top 20 construction company in the world, go for it. Whatever you want to do, go for it. But to get there and to be the best, keep an open mind, keep communicating, keep learning, you know, and do the best you can. And I think for me as well, I think, you know, if I dare to talk about the world of, you know, diversity and all those sort of issues that are quite topical at the moment, you know, given my background and starting in the construction industry in the late 80s, it's a very different world. Yet it wasn't about, you know, it was about my own endeavors that enabled me to get where I needed to get to. And I'll tell you a really interesting story. So I became a director of Midas Construction down in the southwest, and I was in the car with a project team. I think we'd either been for a bid interview or something. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, everyone in the car, everyone was having a chat. And as we were driving back to base, somebody's piped up and said, "Nalin, do you mind if I ask you a question?" I said, "Yeah, no, sure, carry on." And bear in mind, as I think I was 35 at the time, just become a director of a top 200 UK construction company, and somebody said, do you mind if I said, no, ask away. They said, do you play golf? I said, no. I'm thinking, where's this going? What are they on about? And they said, are you a mason? I thought, no. I'm thinking, where on earth is this question going now? And I said, no. And they said, well, how on earth did you get this job? And I thought, well, that was really telling, really, really telling that, back in those days, it was much about who you knew, in terms of getting a position, as opposed to how good you were. And, at the end of the day, I didn't play golf. I wasn't a member of the lodge. I got there on my own merits, and it was about my own abilities and my courage of my conviction and my confidence to do what I was doing. So I think that's the lesson, as much as sometimes it is about who you know, that's natural, that's life, that happens. But at the end of the day, make sure you know what you're doing, keep learning, take advice, listen, talk, and you'll progress in whatever you want to do, to whatever level you want to get to.
Thank you. That's such amazing advice, and I'm sure everyone on here really appreciates it, as do me and Lydia. So now we'd just like to talk a little bit about the Heart of the City project. So when did you get involved in the project, and how long have you been working on it?
So yeah, before answering that, and just for everyone on this webinar, I'll go into detail on the project next week. So just as a reminder, there'll be more about what the actual project is about next week. But yeah, how did I get involved in this? Well, when I joined the Sheffield City Council as effectively property director back in 2009, there was a change. There was some restructures went on in 2013, and I took on the role as director of capital and major projects. I still retained the property director role within that, but the title changed to director of capital and major projects. So I was then in charge of the capital program for the council, and the major projects element was there as well. And I thought, hang on a minute, there's a major project there called the new retail quarter. That's what it was back then, with Hammerson as the developer. They'd branded the scheme Seven Stone, and I thought, well, I can't be the director of major projects and not have any involvement in that thing. So I argued a bit, and I said, that needs to be part of my workload. And so that's how I got involved, and that was back in, as I say, that was back in 2013, and that's how I got involved in it. So quite a long time now.
Yeah, that has been a very long time. So how did you actually get the project to come to fruition, to actually start becoming constructed?
So I'll talk about the background next week, but in terms of where we are today, it was very much about it was coming back to what I talked about earlier, how we in this industry have to try and solve problems. So I sat there with this thing not moving anywhere and thought, how on earth do we unlock this? And the first opportunity to unlock it was Grosvenor House with HSBC. And we thought, you know what, given that it was a new retail quarter, we were kind of ahead of the time. We knew that retail was changing, and the scheme shouldn't just be about retail, it should be about mixed use. And the HSBC project was out there. HSBC had gone to the development industry, as they would. They wouldn't ask a council to deliver anything like that. But we found out who was involved. We said, can we actually put a bid in to HSBC? They said yes, and I then went to my chief executive at the time and said, can I put a bid in? And they said, well, what do we know about this stuff? No, leave it to the private sector, leave it to the developers. And I thought, no, wrong answer. So I went to my boss and said, will you give me cover if I put a bid in? Will you back me? He said, yeah, go for it. So I put a bid in, and it felt like being back in the construction industry, putting a tender in. It was exactly like that. And in order to do it, I actually had to pull a team together very quickly, because we had to, come up with the architectural side of things, the project management side. So we've pulled a fantastic team together, and we put the bid in, and we won it. And that was a starting point, because once we'd won it, and I'll go into more detail on that next week as to how that actually came about. But that was the catalyst. And sometimes these things, it's about having a catalyst. So that's how the project came to fruition.
Thank you. I think especially, as you know, I work for the East Riding Yorkshire Council. I'm especially interested in this project because it is branching from the public body and making those connections with the private sector and doing it in such a successful way, that I feel like a lot more councils should take recognition of this, not just for what the buildings are going to be and how amazing the urban realm is going to be once it's done, but just the connections, like you're saying, that people are making and that you're making with the private industry. And doing it all from the public, even though people didn't believe it initially. I'm sure they're very happy that you did push for it. So what industry roles have you enjoyed collaborating with most on this project, and why?
I think all of them, to be perfectly honest with you. Starting with, with getting Grosvenor House off the ground with HSBC. The first challenge was actually dealing with the demolition of the Grosvenor Hotel that stood on that site beforehand. And because we'd lost a year out of the programme, that's because of 8 changes on HSBC's part, but we lost the best part of the year out of the programme. I actually had to go down to site and stand on a heap of rubble and talk to the demolition contractor, and make sure that they were going to get that old thing down as promised. Otherwise, we weren't going to be able to start the main contract. And so it was everything from collaborating with the demolition contractor through to collaborating with BAM, working with the client, working with HSBC, the architects team, the whole lot. It was just that particular project, given that delay, given the challenges around time. Given some of the challenges on some of even the legal processes around stopping up highways and getting road closures and all of that sort of thing, it was just amazing. And as an example of good collaboration, that was one of them. And working with BAM and the team was for me at that point in time second to none. I'm hoping we're going to experience that as we go forward with the other projects, but that at the time was the best, and that was collaborating with everybody was amazing.
Yes, and now you've got Henry Boot on site, haven't you, Lydia? You're over in your hometown working on this project, so.
Yes, for those that don't know, I'm actually on the Heart of the City project, so yes, very exciting.
Yeah, so looking forward, I think what we need to maintain that sort of momentum of collaboration on this. And I did a site visit recently, met the project director and project managers for Henry Boot, and said, the main thing here is keep talking. We just got to, any issues, talk about it. Let's work it through, and collaborate. Because if we don't collaborate, that's when the contractual issues start to come forward and people start reaching for the contract, which is normally buried away in a drawer somewhere, and we don't want that. Ultimately, getting the delivery done, everybody achieving what they wanted to achieve out of the scheme, is then success for everybody.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. So as you said before, learning is key, and everyone needs to continue to keep learning. So what is one thing that you've learned, maybe lessons learned or personal development from working on Heart of the City?
So I think the most interesting thing is how I've ended up almost moving away from the industry in terms of that learning. So with something like Heart of the City, and ending up dealing with the master plan, which I say we'll talk about next week, but you think, hang on a minute, what's this bloke who screwed up in his A levels, did an HND in construction, ending up doing working up a master plan on Heart of the City? Well, through all of that experience that I talked about, getting the academic qualifications along the way, that all helped. Actually making a switch from construction into the public sector, and dealing with estates and dealing with the capital programs and dealing with regeneration projects all helped. Working in the public sector and having a stint looking after things like the planning department, the transport department, the highways department, all helped. Yeah, so you know, it's all of this build up of experience throughout the years that all adds to that. But where I really moved forward, which might be quite interesting, is how I decided after all these years, it was really about understanding people at the end of the day. And that for me, I thought, well, you know, it might sound easy or it might sound silly to a lot of people because we're all people and we all talk to each other and we do what we do. So what the heck's he on about, learning about people? Well, for me, this was about understanding how we behave as human beings and what that means for the built environment. So with some of the challenges we talked about earlier on, and some of the challenges we're facing now in terms of, you know, we talked about smart earlier and that whole role of digitization and data, and that's changing. You know, it's changed the retail environment. So we now all walk around with a department store in our pockets. You know, you don't have to go into physical building anymore. That's changing the built environment. But what's changing that? It's us as human beings and how our behaviours change. So it led me to get involved in other courses and seek out other learning. So I got into the realms of anthropology, and I did a short course at Oxford University on social anthropology. You know, even getting to the point where you're studying, you know, sort of tribal patterns and those tribal patterns and how they reflect, you know, societies from the past and actually how that relates to how we operate in our societies today. And these are the things. This is where, you know, my own personal development now has kind of moved on from what you would think as traditional property or construction information to more on the social sciences. I looked at the role of cities and I did a small course looking at the sociology of cities, which was really interesting, and looking at how cities have developed over the years, and what that ultimately, why am I doing that? Because I want to understand what this means for the built environment and how we need to think about the future and how we need to go forwards. And more recently, I did a course at London School of Economics, which was about cities and design and governance, which was fascinating. If you get the opportunity to do these things, do it, because what I found amazing there, I was connected to people from right around the planet. I'm working with people right around the globe, listening to their stories, learning from them, has been also, you know, it all enriches your own experience and your own ability and your own thinking as to how you do things. So my personal development, sort of rounding up on that, it's taken me from, you know, trying to understand what construction technology is all about and geotechnics and all that stuff in the past to now at super scale, actually understanding how we operate as human beings, how our behavior influences the built environment, how our behaviors influence the design of cities, and therefore what that means for the industry going forwards. So yeah, that's really been that's where it is today.
Thank you so much. I absolutely love that. It ties in really well actually to what I'm studying with my thesis in architecture at the Oxford Brookes Apprenticeship. I'm looking at how spaces make people feel mentally and how we can improve our well-being just by the space that we're in, and how architects need to be responsible for thinking about not just comfort levels, not physical needs, but mental and cognitive needs, which is something very, very crazy to, like you say, bring in anthropology, bring in sociology, psychology. And I find all of that so interesting. It's why I love the built environment, because we are encapsulating life and everything to do with it. So fantastic. Thank you so much. We've got 5 minutes, so if anyone is wanting to ask any questions, please do. And again, thank you so much for attending. It's been so wonderful, and you've been a fantastic speaker.
Thank you very much. Look forward to next week.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait to hear more about the projects, and it's so great. This is why we wanted to do it, for everyone to hear just where you've come from. It really does build a richer image of all of the things you've accomplished so far on the heart of Sheffield.
I've even grown a beard since that photograph on the slides. That's,
Yes, you have. You look quite different, actually.
Lockdown.
Lockdown beard. Yeah. That was so inspiring. I feel like I'm gonna end and be like, wow.
I do have a question myself, actually, about all of the learning that you're talking about. I am doing an apprenticeship, like I said, in line with my work, and as much as I love learning, I do struggle to actually find time for other aspects of my life. But also, it couldn't be possible without the support of my council and finding me this apprenticeship and giving me everything I need to be successful at it. But have you gone out and found all of these courses on your own, or did you get support from your employees? Like, how did that work?
So when I did my my construction degree at Southampton, which was a Nottingham Trent University degree, that was my employer helped me through that. My employers back in the past, in terms of people like Molam Construction, which sadly no more, they got subsumed into the wimpy Carillion thing, and now even Carillion's no more. But it was a fantastic organisation to work for, with a lot of training and development, a lot of support, and they helped me through my construction degree. My law degree I did under my own steam. I paid for that myself. That was quite tough, finding the time, but you have to find the time. So I did that myself, and the more recent things that I've been doing, again, I've sorted that out myself, to be honest. I think when you get to the, especially public sector and money's a bit tight, you've got to, maybe those you, Demi, in the public sector, and maybe others that are on this call listening that are in the public sector, maybe, if you think the financial support to do some of these courses, there is actually a lot out there that's all, you might not get a certificate, but you can, there are lots of short courses that just help expand the mind. So if you find that those are limitations in terms of major time commitments or financial commitments to these things, then have a good look. There's some interesting stuff out there for free. But whichever way you can do it is the message from me.
Amazing. Well, we've not had any more questions, so we're going to wrap up for today. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. It's been so wonderful. We will be putting this, as we said, on our YouTube channel for those that couldn't attend. And again, any questions, please feel free to get in touch with myself or Lydia. So thank you, Nalin, for this wonderful webinar. I've enjoyed it so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Nalin. That was great. So hopefully see everyone next week for the second part of Heart of the City webinars.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.